This video was brought to you by Brilliant. Italy is suffering through one of the worst demographic crises anywhere in the world. Thanks to the fact that it has the lowest fertility rate in Europe, Italy's population has been aging since the 70s and has actively been shrinking since 2014, which has put immense strain on Italy's public finances. And Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni came to power by explicitly promising to end, in her words, Italy's demographic winter. So in this video, we're going to take a look at Italy's demographic crisis, Meloni's new pro-child policies, and whether they might actually end Italy's demographic winter. Before we start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell to stay in the loop and be notified when we release new videos. So to understand this crisis, you need to know a bit about fertility rates and Italy's ongoing demographic crisis. To maintain a stable population, a country needs a fertility rate, that is, the number of births per female, of 2.1. Now, low fertility rates, that is a fertility rate significantly below the replacement rate of 2.1, are economically and politically stressful for a country. Low fertility rates mean a smaller and, importantly, older population, which means that there are less people of working age relative to pensioners, which means a smaller economically productive population sustaining a relatively larger non-productive population. Together, this means two things: a smaller economy overall because you've got fewer working age people, and two, a higher tax burden on those young people who are working. This is because, assuming you want to maintain your current quality of public services, you need to make sure that you're getting the same amount of tax per capita. But if you've got fewer working age people and more idle pensioners, then you'll need to tax those working age people more heavily to keep standards up. This is both bad economically. A higher tax burden will, at least in theory, discourage working, but it's also bad socially because it creates intergenerational unfairness. Now, most of the developed world, and actually quite a lot of the developing world too, is struggling with low fertility rates at the moment. The US, for example, has seen its fertility rate drop from about 4 in 1960 to 1.8 today. And the latest Eurostat data from 2021 suggests that Europe has a fertility rate of about 1.5. But while the problem is relatively widespread, Italy's demographic decline has been the most practically acute. For at least the last decade, Italy has been struggling with a fertility rate that's not just below the replacement rate of 2.1, but also well below the European average. According to World Bank data, Italy's fertility rate dropped below replacement as early as 1976 and has stayed below ever since. In fact, Italy's fertility rate fell to an astonishing 1.18 in 1995, then one of the lowest in the world. And while it recovered a bit in the 2010s, reaching a high of 1.45 in 2010 itself, this has since continued to decline, and less than 400,000 babies were born in 2022, which is the lowest number since unification in 1861, and implies a birth rate of about 1.2. The lowest birth rate anywhere in the OECD. And unlike other countries, which often have high fertility hotspots, low fertility rates are pretty universal in Italy. According to data from 2020, every Italian region has a below replacement fertility rate, and the highest rate was only about 1.5. Unsurprisingly then, this means that Italy's population is old and shrinking, and things are only likely to get worse over the coming years. Italy's population has been shrinking since 2014, and Italy's statistics agency forecasts that it will drop to about 52 million people by 2050, and then under 50 million people by 2070. Italy also has the oldest population in the EU, with a median age of 48, well below the EU average of 44. Accordingly, Italy also has the highest old age dependency ratio in the EU at 0.38, which is expected to rise to 0.6 in the next few decades, meaning that there'll only be about 3 working age people for every 2 pensioners. This will put massive strain on Italy's national budget, which is already under significant strain. In fact, today, Italy's debt-to-GDP ratio is above 130%, one of the highest anywhere in the world, and borrowing costs are at a post-2008 high. Combined, this suggests that Italy won't be able to borrow that much more money in the future. So if the economy wants to survive, they'll either need to reduce their old age dependency ratio or make some politically difficult spending cuts and tax rises. Anyway, you get the idea. Like many other countries, Italy is struggling through an acute demographic crisis. But what makes the Italian case so interesting is the fact that fertility has become a significant political issue, and successive Italian governments have tried hard to stimulate the fertility rate. In fact, fertility has become the center of a major public debate. Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni and her Brothers of Italy party came to power last year explicitly promising to solve Italy's fertility crisis. Meloni has repeatedly warned that Italy is facing what she describes as a demographic winter, and implemented a series of policies to reduce the financial burden on young parents. Now, this ties into Meloni's immigration skepticism, because she acknowledges that without higher fertility rates, Italy will need more migrants to keep its public finances afloat. So, what are these policies? Well, thus far, Meloni has continued a Draghi-era scheme that gives families between 50 and 175 euros per newborn child, and halved VAT on products like nappies and baby food. She's also extended financial support for families with 4 kids or more, cut taxes on child benefits, and plans to spend 4 billion euros from the EU COVID Recovery Fund on new childcare facilities, with nursery places for over 250,000 people. Meloni is also pushing employers to adopt family-friendly policies like flexible working hours or on-site childcare. But this will be difficult given the weakness of the Italian economy and the fact that more than a third of Italian employers are either self-employed or on short-term contracts. And unfortunately for Meloni, so far these policies have had little effect. As we mentioned a second ago, Italy saw fewer births in 2022 than ever before, and provisional data from the first few months of 2023 suggests that they've fallen even further still. Pro-natalist policies in countries like China, Singapore, and Japan have also so far proven to be ineffective. And even places like Sweden, which have immensely generous family benefits, have fertility rates below replacement. Now, fertility rates have recovered in the past. Many Western countries went from below replacement to above replacement during the post-war baby boom in the 50s. But the fact that other modern economies have been unable to boost their fertility rates suggests that Meloni's current policies might not be sufficient, and Italy's demographic decline could prove difficult to reverse. A lot of the stuff we talk about at TLDR can often seem pretty complicated, especially when we dive deep into economics and detailed data. But there's a fun and easy way for you to learn more about these topics, which doesn't cost thousands of dollars or take years and years of schooling. That's because Brilliant is the best way to learn maths, data science, and computer science interactively. And it doesn't take long to learn either. These complex topics are broken down into accessible chunks designed around your busy schedule. That means that by spending just a few hours a day, you can accumulate new knowledge over time in an actually fun way. As time goes on, you'll get used to that empowering feeling of learning too, because this isn't just about memorization and lectures. Brilliant teaches you by doing, using active learning techniques to teach you the principles behind otherwise complex subjects, and ensuring you actually understand what's going on. So, whether you want to brush up on basic math skills, improve your employment prospects by learning about future technologies, or just have fun with coding, then you can check out everything that Brilliant has to offer for free for a full 30 days by clicking our link in the description. Plus, the first 200 of you to sign up will get 20% off Brilliant's annual premium subscription. Thanks for your support.